Check to make sure that we are streaming. Yes, we are live and alive, hopefully alive. Good to be alive. So let's get started. All right. Okay, let's have a little kirtan. Let's see, what are we going to chant tonight? Okay, we'll do the Manak Shiksha, which is Nitai Pradakamala. I got a guitar. Okay. Let's go. Nitai Pradakamala, Koti Chanda Shushita. Jai Dharma Nitai Pradakamala, Tichanda Shuchitala, Jai Dharma Hey no Nitai Bile Bye. Kuri Garuni Jai Hey no Jai Bili Bhai Radha Krishna Bhai Jai Rina Kuri Garuni Jai Say some mananaya Stay Pachu, Oro Raja. Nitana Bolero Muke, Achilo Samsara Suke, Richakule, Kiko Nitana Bolero Muke, Achilo Samsara Suke, Richakule, Kiko Ahankara Matoy Nitai Pradakamala Atsachere Sachakore Ahankara Matoy Asachere Sachakuri Nitaya Karuna Rajira Krishna Bhai Daru Nitai Charana Tukani Nitaya Nitaya Jurana Satya Tahara Seva Dale Satya Tara Siva Ganesha Nitai Pada Satakoro Asha Narotama Bano Yuki Nitai Moreko Suki Nakoranga Janina Basha Narotama Bano Yuki Nitai Moreko Suki Nakoranga Janina Basha Nitai Madakomala Koti Chana Shushita Yechaya Jakajurai Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Pada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. I do that. Okay. Jai Om Vishnupad. Paramahansa Paramahansa. Also Teta Sitashi Shimad, His Divine Grace. Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturadam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Budale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Chidamani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschachate Shikari. Let me read the translation. In this material world which is progressing towards hell, there is always a blazing fire, and everyone is struggling hard without finding peace. Therefore, if the world wants to have real peace, it should take shelter under the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, which are cooling like the shining of millions of moons. Unless one takes shelter under the shade of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, it will be very difficult to approach Radha and Krishna. Anyone who does not establish their relationship with Lord Nityananda is simply spoiling their boon of a human birth and the animal propensities of sense gratification. Never saying the names of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, they become absorbed in so-called material enjoyment, and their academic education and birth in a high family or great nation will not protect them at the time of death. They have become maddened by a false concept of bodily life, and thus they have forgotten their eternal relationship with Lord Nityananda. Such forgetful persons accept the illusory energy as factual. When you achieve the mercy of Lord Nityananda, then you will be able to approach Radha Krishna. Firmly catch hold of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. The lotus feet of Lord Nityananda are not illusion. They are a fact, and anyone who engages in the transcendental loving service of Lord Nityananda immediately achieves the transcendental position on the spiritual platform, which is eternal and blissful. Therefore, always try to catch the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, Narottama Das Thakur says, my dear Lord Nityananda, I am very unhappy, so I am praying to you to make me happy. Please keep me in a corner of your lotus feet. Narottama Das Thakur ki jai. Interesting, he says here. Anyone who engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord Nityananda immediately achieves their transcendental position on the spiritual platform. That's a secret in spiritual life. By serving Srila Prabhupada's preaching mission, then you achieve your spiritual position, not just by running and thinking you're a gopi. Okay, on that happy note, we're going to go to the Jaiva Dharma. And I'm going to make the announcement now, and I'll make it at the end of class, that tomorrow we're not going to have class, and we'll see when we have class again over the next week, because I'm traveling tomorrow. For the next 2 days I'm traveling. And the morning class will be pretty much the same time, within an hour or two, of when I'm in Fiji, Australia, New Zealand, of when I'm giving class right now. So anyway, you'll get your little WhatsApp messages when I give class, whenever I give class, as I'm traveling. So pray for safe travel. Okay, so let's go. Om Gana Timidandasha Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorancia. That's Spanish. Okay, so let's share the screen. Let's see what we got here. Okay, I have to make sure that that screen is open. Wait a second. Jaiva Dharma, okay. So let's share the screen. There we go, Jaiva Dharma. Yes, that's Jaiva Dharma. And then we'll change the spacing on the screen. Adjust the text. And just one other thing I have to do. Okay, we're ready to go. So here, what we have is Jaiva Das keeps asking about renounced life. And, when should one accept renunciation? Renunciation here means the Babaji dress, not the type of sannyas dress that we have now. Because Babaji means basically no social interaction. You just chant the holy names, absorb in Krishna Katha 24 hours a day, and certainly no dealings in the ordinary material world. That's what a Babaji is. Just absorption. And basically, goodbye, cruel world. That's what a Babaji is. Okay. So, in this Kali Yuga, in this day and age, I don't advise anyone to become a Babaji, and I advise you to be careful about any Babaji that you have to run into, because there's many cheaters. Okay. On that note, so, in other words, one should renounce and become a Babaji, or even a regular sannyasi, when they're ready. Otherwise, as mentioned here, depravity soon manifests. Jaiva Das says, should the renunciate accept the Babaji dress? Anantadas said, when the desire for a household life is completely extinguished, whether the person lives in the forest or in the house, that renunciate devotee purifies the whole world. Some accept the kopina and worn-out cloth in order to be known by the signs of a Babaji. On accepting the kopina and cloth, they make a firm promise in front of some renunciate Vaishnavas. This is called entering the Babaji ashram, or wearing the cloth. If you accept it, accepting begging, beka, what harm is there? Oh, if you call it, sorry, not if you accept it. If you call it accepting begging, beka, what harm is there? Jaiva Das said, is it necessary to be known by the signs of a Babaji ashram? And Anand, it's actually, it keeps saying Ananda, it said Nanta Das Babaji. There's some editing mistakes here. Ananta Das said, If a person is known in the world to be a Babaji, then relatives will not relate with him and easily give him up. He will also not desire to enter into household life again. Fear of society will arise with a natural manifestation of detachment. In other words, when you wear a particular uniform, you tend to identify with that, and other people tend to identify you in terms of that uniform. For the renunciate who has mature renunciation, in other words, detachment, taking the Babaji ashram has no use, but for others it is useful. In other words, someone who's completely detached, it doesn't matter how they dress or not dress, or whatever clothes, it doesn't really matter. But for those who are very renounced, but not quite completely renounced, then it's helpful because it reminds one of one's position, and it also keeps one away, hopefully, from the dangers of this world, and keeps people away from you. It is said in the Bhagavatam, Sajahati matim loke vede ja parinishtitam. The devotee gives up thinking of karma kanda and material affairs. Karma kanda means acquiring material things. Bhagavatam 4:29-46. It is not necessary for the devotee with proper characteristics to accept the Babaji ashram. It is necessary as long as there is regard for society. In other words, that's exactly what I just said. If one will be freed from society by taking the Babaji ashram, then one takes it. But if one is already free from any inclination, there's no need. And also, on the other hand, if one is really attached to material society and friendship, then one shouldn't take the Babaji ashram. So it's like a middle ground. Anantadas said, one should accept the ashram from another renounced devotee. The household devotee does not taste the affairs of the renounced devotee. Thus, he does not give the renounced ashram to anyone. You can't. In other words, a householder cannot initiate a sannyasi into the sannyas order, or a person into the sannyas order. It is said in the scriptures, Apariksho padishtam yat loka nashaya chadbavet. Teaching what one has not personally tested or tasted destroys the world. That's from the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. In other words, you have to really have the realization to introduce someone into a situation. If you're going to learn how to do something, you should learn how to do something from a person who's already learned and does it well. Otherwise, it's kind of silly. You just teach yourself. In other words, what do they say? One who is his own guru is the guru of a fool. Interesting. Yadavada said, what should the guru who gives the renounced order consider? Anantadas said, first the guru should see if the student is suitable or not. Being a household devotee, does he have the nature of a brahmana, such as control of senses and mind, of the power of bhakti? Is he free of association with women? Has he uprooted the desire for eating good food and thirst for material objects? He should keep the student near him for some days and examine him thoroughly. When he understands he is a suitable candidate, he will give the renunciant's cloth. Before that, he should not give it. If one gives Babaji to an unsuitable candidate, the guru will fall down for sure. Phew! I'm not giving Babaji to anybody. Nor will I take Babaji. I see now that taking Babaji is a serious affair. Unqualified gurus are making the ashram materialistic. This is just the beginning. What will finally happen, I cannot say. Anantadas said, Mahaprabhu punished Chota Haridas, who committed a small offense in order to keep the method pure. Those who follow Mahaprabhu should remember the punishment of Haridas at all times. Yadavada said, is it proper to take Babaji and then build a place for serving the deity? In other words, the Babaji ashram shouldn't be opening up temples. So, the sannyasa ashram for preaching, which is completely different, that's all right, but for preaching. When a suitable person enters the ashram, he should beg daily to maintain his life. He should not make a show of building a temple. At some place, he should remain in a solitary hut or the temple of a householder. He should not live through collecting funds. He should chant Krishna's name without offense constantly. That's a Babaji. Yadava Das said, what does one call a person who builds a temple and lives there like a householder? In other words, a renunciate, not just a renunciate, a Babaji. Anantadas said he is an eater of vomit. And the Sanskrit word is vatangshi. He eats what he has previously vomited. Yadavadas says, that's pretty heavy words. Does he remain a Vaishnava? Ananta, should be Ananta again, instead of Ananda, said, when his behavior does not follow the Vedic principles and is contrary to the Vaishnava Dharma, will I associate with him any longer? He gives up pure bhakti and takes shelter of deceit. What is his relationship with the Vaishnava? Yadavadas said, how can one say that he's given up being a Vaishnava if he has not given up chanting the holy name? Anantadas said, Lord's name and nama aparad are different. If one commits sin on the strength of the name, it is an offense to the name. One should flee from the offense to the name. Yadavadas said, can one call his life a life dedicated to Krishna? Talking about someone who actually takes a Babaji, he takes up the Babaji order and then doesn't act properly. Nandadas says, never. There is no duplicity in a life dedicated to Krishna. It's completely sincere. There is no offense. Yadavadas says, I think that he is less than a household devotee. Anantadas said, when he is not a devotee, one cannot compare him to any devotee. Heavy statement. Yadavadas said, how then can he be delivered? Anantadas said, when he gives up all offenses and weeps while chanting the holy name, the name continuously, he will be counted among the devotees again. Yadavadas says, oh Babaji, the household devotees take shelter of Varnashram. Can he give up Varnashram and still be a household devotee? Interesting statement. Can you give up Varnashram? Nandadas said, Vaishnava Dharma, this is not Varnashram Dharma, Vaishnava Dharma means you're a servant of Krishna. It's very generous. It is called Jaiva Dharma. The Dharma, or the activity of the Jiva, that's us. All human beings have the qualification for Vaishnava Dharma. The outcast human beings who accept Vaishnava Dharma can remain as householders. They do not have Varnashram. Again, within the Varnashram system, the fallen sannyasi, later by attaining pure bhakti by the association of devotees, can become a household devotee. But such persons do not follow the Varnashram rules. Those who have left Varnashram because of sinful acts, if they and their children, taken shelter of pure bhakti through devotional association, become household devotees, then they also do not follow Varnashram. Thus there are two types of household devotees, those who follow Varnashram and those who are devoid of Varnashram. And here's an interesting question. Yadavadas says, who is better of the two? Because this really answers a lot of questions that ISKCON devotees have about Varnashram. Can we please Krishna more by being engaged in Varnashram? And Anantadas answers that question. The person who has greater devotion is better. If bhakti is deficient of the two by material standards, the person following Varnashram is better since he follows Dharma. The other is an outcast. From the spiritual perspective, both are low since they have little bhakti. In other words, if people are judged according to their spiritual status, not according to their position in Varnashram or whether they follow Varnashram. That's really what's been stated here. But if they don't have a spiritual status, then basically you qualify someone or judge someone as to whether they follow Varnashram or not. I hope that's clear. Yadavadas says, if someone qualified for renunciation if he remains in the house but dresses, is someone qualified for renunciation if he remains in the house but dresses like a renunciate? Oh my God. Anantadas says, remains with his wife and dresses like a Babaji? No. Anantadas said, no. If he does so, he cheats himself and the world. He has these two faults. If a householder wears a kopina, he simply mocks and offends the renunciate Babajis. Yadavadas said, oh Babaji, is there a scriptural system for taking the Babaji order of life? And Anantadas says, no, this is not clear. Men can become Vaishnavas from all Varnas, but according to scriptures, only Brahmanas can accept sannyas. In Bhagavatam, after describing the qualities of all Varnas, Narada in the end says, Yasha ya lakshanam proktam tat tenaiva vinirdashet. One should decide a person's Varna according to the qualities mentioned. In other words, before taking sannyas or becoming a Babaji, one should have Brahminical qualities. Otherwise, don't do it, Prabhu. Not that you have to be born in a Brahmin family. The Varna is decided by the qualities which I mentioned, 7:11:35. That's Bhagavatam. Not by one's birth. On the strength of this statement, if a person from another Varna has the qualities of a Brahmin, then he can accept sannyas. So in other words, even if someone is born in a Malecha family, if he has the qualities of a Brahmin and he's renounced, then he can accept sannyas. But if he doesn't have the qualities of Brahmin, even if he's born in a Brahmin family, he can't take sannyas. If the qualities are truly present, then the action is approved by Scripture. This action is strong only from the spiritual point of view. From the material viewpoint, it is not strong. Okay, very good. So Yadavadas said, Chandidas, that's his friend who he brought with him, who previously became detached from his children because his children tried to steal all of his money, and they eventually did. And anyway, he's taken shelter of the holy Dham, along with his wife, Damayanti. So Yadavadas said, Chandidas, have you received an answer to your question? Chandidas said, I've understood all the words of instruction that emanated from the respected Babaji's mouth. The Jiva, forgetting that he is eternally the servant of Krishna, takes shelter of a material body and experiences happiness and distress from material objects in the gunas. To experience the results of karma, he must wear a garland of birth, old age, and death. Okay. Then when we come into this material world, I'm paraphrasing, we get happiness and distress from the material objects and the material modes of nature. That's obvious. So if we want to get good karmic results, we must accept birth, death, old age, and disease. If you want something in this world, you're accepting it. Sometimes he takes a high birth and sometimes a low birth. With newer and newer identities, he is brought into various situations. In a transitory, that means temporary body, he is inspired to action by hunger and thirst, etc., and lust and anger and greed. He experiences various difficulties because of the lack of objects in the world. Various pains afflict his body because there's always scarcity. You always want more. And so you're difficult in difficulty where you have pains and you want peace and you don't get it. So in his house he quarrels with his wife and sons and sometimes even commits suicide. Greedy for money, he commits many sinful acts. He experiences physical suffering, criminal punishment, public disrespect. He experiences suffering from theft, destruction of wealth, and separation from family. In old age, he suffers from relatives' neglect. In old age, he suffers from coughing and rheumatism. When he dies, he experiences pain in the womb again. Oh my God, 9 months being trapped. I definitely don't want to be there again. While the body remains, lust, anger, greed, bewilderment, intoxication, and envy become strong. Discernment has no place. He can't discriminate between matter and spirit. This is samsara, the repetition of birth and death. I have now understood the word samsara. I offer repeated respects to Babaji. The Vaishnava is the guru of the worlds. Today, by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, I have attained knowledge of samsara. Hearing the good instructions of Anantadas Babaji, the devotees present all said it was very good, and shouted the name of the Lord. Gradually, many devotees had gathered there. They sang a song composed by Lahiri. Remember, Lahiri is a new devotee too, who took shelter of Vaishnavadas Babaji. And he's also expert in singing. So here's a song composed by Lahiri. E gora samsare pariya manava napaya dukera shisha saru sanga kori hari vajayadhi tabiya antahaya klesha vishayanale dwaliche hridaye Anale Pare Anal Aparada Charilaya Krishna Nama Anale Padayati Jal Nitai Chaitanya Charna Kamale Ashraya Laila Ye Kalidasa Bole Jivane Marine Amara Ashraya Se. Falling into terrible samsara means repeated birth and death. Man has no end to his suffering. If one attains the association of devotees and worships the Lord, suffering comes to an end. So we want the suffering to come to an end. So we seek the association. It's like soothing balm on the heart to have the association of devotees. The heart is burning in the fire of material life. By the fire of material life, the fire grows. If one gives up offenses and chants Krishna's name, that water extinguishes the fire. That's like samsara. Samsara davana liloka, like we chant every morning, and also like Chaitodarpana Marjanam. Kalidas says, he who takes shelter of the lotus feet of Chaitanya and Nityananda is my shelter in life after death, life and death. During this kirtan, Chandidas began dancing in bliss. Taking the dust from the feet of the Babajis with a choked voice, he cried in bliss. Everyone said, Chandidas is very fortunate. After a few moments, Yadavadas said, Chandidas, let us cross the river. Chandidas whispered to him, if you cross, I will cross. The two offered respects. That means, if you cross the ocean of birth and death, I will go with you. Okay. The two offered respects on the ground in Pradyumna Kunja and went outside. They saw Damayanti offering full respects. She said, why did I take a female birth? If I had taken a male birth, I would easily enter the bower and see the great souls. I would be successful by taking the dust of their feet. I will spend my days being the servant of the Vaishnavas in Navadvip, birth after birth. So that's just a rule that Babajis have. They cannot be anywhere close to members of the opposite gender. So one devotee said, my recitation sounds like Bengalis, maybe my last life. Yadavadas said, Godruma is a most holy place. Just by coming here, pure bhakti arises in the jiva. Godruma, the coward village, was a playground of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord of the Jivas. Knowing this truth, Prabodhananda Saraswati has prayed, Naloka Vedodita Marga Vedai, Avisha Sanklishatai Re Vimuda. Atena Sarvam Pariharitya Gode, Shri Godame Parna Kutim Kurudwam. O fools, finding no solution through methods mentioned in the Vedas or Smritis, you are tormented. Give up everything immediately and make a leaf hut in Godruma within Navadvip. Yes, because most of the Vedas, they're just dealing with what? Trigunya Vishaya Veda Nish Trigunya Bhavardhana. With people and injunctions about the three modes of nature. Because they're meant for people who are not so much into Krishna consciousness, but hopefully can be elevated to Krishna consciousness one day. Just like today, I was speaking to a new devotee. And this new devotee comes from India, he comes from Jaipur. And he was explaining to me that he had read so many literatures, all of Prabhupada's books too, which is good. But he said he also read the Manu Samhita. And I said, oh my God, reading the Manu Samhita can basically spoil your spiritual life. Because you're going to take things that are no longer not applicable. Plus, is there an actual bona fide copy of the Manu Samhita available? Has been passed down to succession? I doubt it very much. But there's many things that are no longer applicable. You read the Manu Samhita, you can't do a lot of things like eating carrots and eggplants and things that all things you like to do. And there's so many injunctions. You've got to figure out what day of the week it is, what day of the month it is, and you do certain things on each day. Oh my God, you spend your whole life in following different injunctions. And then at the end of life, you won't have time for chanting Hare Krishna. Eventually, the three crossed the Ganga and arrived at the village of Kulia. From that day, Chandidas and his wife began to manifest the astonishing mood of the Vaishnavas. It seemed that samsara no longer touched them. Their ornaments were serving Vaishnavas, chanting the name of Krishna constantly, and giving mercy to all jivas. O most blessed merchant couple, O most blessed Vaishnava Prasad, most blessed name, O most blessed Navadvip Dham. So, just to reiterate the story of Chandidas and Damayanti, Chandidas and Damayanti had, they were before they went to Navadvip area, he was a businessman, and he was very cheap, never wanted to help the Vaishnavas or entertain guests or anything like that. He just kept putting his money aside, extremely cheap. And he buried most of his money in his bedroom. And so he had children, 3 sons, and the 3 sons became like him because, like father, like son. And not only that, the sons got married, and their wives became like their husband. And so, like husband, like wife. And so they neglected their parents. The parents, of course, were Chandidas and Damayanti. So they neglected them tremendously. And Chandidas was thinking, I have to give them some incentive to take care of me. And he said, look, I have some extra money that's hidden, and whoever takes care of me the best, they can keep that money. And so the brothers and their wives met, and they said, this is ridiculous. We don't know what this fool's going to do with his money. In other words, they're talking about their parents. And he said, let's send them on pilgrimage to Navadvip. And while they're on pilgrimage to Navadvip, we'll take all their money, and they probably won't come back. So they said to their parents, you should go on pilgrimage to Navadvip. We'll pay for it. Don't worry about it. And we'll send this nice Vaishnavi to accompany you, to take care of you, to guide you around. So anyway, they thought, wow, now our sons finally love us. I guess they were interested in the money. So they go to Kulia, which is the place for forgiving sins in the Navadvip area. So they go to Kulia, and then they get a message saying that their sons have broken into their room, dug up the earth, got the treasure, and they're thinking, we got to go back. And they were advised by the Vaishnavi who was with them, this is pretty stupid, because you go back, they're going to kill you. And they went through this, I guess, a few times. Should we go back? Should we not go back? Eventually, they followed the advice of the Vaishnavi and established themselves in Navadvip. And this particular juncture, they borrowed some money, opened up another grocery business, and with the profits, they began to serve the Vaishnavas. And this way, by this Agyata Sukriti, serving the Vaishnavas and serving guests in general, they got Krishna's blessings, and then they got Krishna's blessings even more by accompanying their friend Yadavadas to see the Babajis and go to Ruma. And this way, they became blessed. So Krishna made the arrangement to take everything away and then put them in a situation where they could actually get good association. Ooh. Now where's the next chapter? Hold on a second. Jaiva Dharma. Let's see. Huh? Oh, here it is. Okay. There are a few pages that are blank on the way to the next chapter. Okay. Next chapter is chapter 8, which is Nitya Dharma and material life. Nitya Dharma, of course, means your eternal position and eternal duties. That means Krishna consciousness. And material life means your temporary activities, duties, desires, entanglement, samsara, all those other nice things that aren't so nice. So one day, the Vaishnavas of Godruma ate prasad and sat in the solitary bower of the Vaishnavas who lived in a grove on the southeastern portion of Gurahara. Lahiri sang the following song and produced the mood of Braj in the Vaishnavas. Wow. This Lahiri is just a new devotee, and the Vaishnavas are really appreciating his musical ability and his poetry. Gora Katalila Kadile Kame Adwaitari Bhakta Sange Nachile Vane Range Kaliya Damana Sankirtane E Hridahite Prabhu Nishtarile Natrakabu Krishna Yena Kaliya Damane. Gauranga performed many pastimes here. Along with Adwaita and others, he danced joyfully in the forest. Singing about Krishna subduing Kaliya, Chaitanya delivered a crocodile from the lake, just as Krishna delivered Kaliya. Through this song, the Vaishnavas identified the pastimes of Gauranga with the pastimes of Krishna, parallel pastimes. Even Lord Chaitanya even has this Ashtakaliya Leela, like Krishna has Ashtakaliya Leela. What's Ashtakaliya Leela? It means the 8 times of the day where Krishna enacts certain pastimes, beginning with the early morning. And so Lord Chaitanya has his Ashtakaliya Leela. One year on Gaur Purnima we read about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Ashtakaliya Leela, the 8 times of the day in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. At this time, a few Vaishnavas from Badagachi came and offered their respects to Gaurachara, and then to the Vaishnavas. The Vaishnavas situated there respected the visitors properly in a solitary bower, thus amongst the bushes. There was an ancient banyan tree. Vaishnavas had constructed a circular sitting place at the base of the tree. The tree was respected and called Nitai's Banyan, since Nityananda Prabhu liked to sit at the base of this tree. Wow. The Vaishnavas sat at the base of the tree and began discussing. Among the Vaishnavas from Badagachi, there was a young inquisitive Vaishnava. He boldly said, "I want to ask a question. Any of you can answer and satisfy me." Haridas Babaji of the solitary bower was a deeply learned scholar. He hardly went anywhere. He was around 100 years old. Sometimes he went to Prajuna Kunja and stayed near Paramahansa Babaji. He had seen Nityananda sitting under this banyan tree. His prime desire was to pass from his body at this place. That's pretty ecstatic. He said, when the assembly of Premadas, this Premadas Babaji, is present here, you need not worry about an answer. The Vaishnava from Badagachi asked, Vaishnava Dharma is eternal Dharma. I desire to know completely the proper behavior toward others for those who have taken shelter of Vaishnava Dharma. Haridas Babaji glanced at Vaishnava Das Babaji and said, "Oh, Vaishnava Das, there is no learned, excellent Vaishnava like you in Bengal today." Because remember, Vaishnava Das Babaji had studied all the Vedic literatures and had previously been immersed in Advaita understanding, personal understanding, but had been given a taste by hearing the holy names from some Vaishnava who passed by him when he was in meditation. And then he had taken shelter of the Vaishnavas there in Godram Dweep, and he became a great Vaishnava and used his previous education to defeat people who were opposed to Vaishnavism and also to help people understand Vaishnavism in a deeper way. There's no learned, excellent Vaishnava like you in Bengal today. Please give him an answer. You had the association of Prabodhananda Saraswati. Wow. Prabodhananda Saraswati. You didn't hear about that before. He was the uncle of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And you have received instructions from Paramahansa Babaji. You are most fortunate and have received Mahaprabhu's mercy. Vaishnava Das humbly said, "You directly saw Nityananda, the avatar of Baladev, and in the association of great souls have instructed many people. Today, please give instructions to us." He was the senior Vaishnava, Haridas Babaji, who had Lord Nityananda's association. He's just about 100 years old. At that time, all the other devotees asked Haridas Babaji to answer the question. Haridas was compelled to agree. Offering respects to Nityananda at the base of the tree, he began to speak. I offer respects as a servant of Krishna to all the jivas in the world. I hold in my head the correct statement. All are servants of Krishna, whether they accept it or not. That's from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela 685. Though all are Krishna's servants by their very nature, because of ignorance or error, they do not accept to be his servants. That's ignorance. They are one group. These are one group. Those who accept being a servant are another group. Thus, in this world, there are two types of people. Those averse to Krishna, Krishna Bhakti-mukha, which means turning the face away from Krishna, and those who accept Krishna, Krishna-mukha, they turn the face to Krishna. Those who are averse to Krishna are absorbed in samsara. There's the word samsara, the repetition of birth and death and entanglement in this world. Among them, most do not accept Dharma. In other words, not even preliminary Dharma like Vaishnava Dharma. One cannot say much about them. They cannot distinguish what to do from what not to do. They are dedicated to selfish enjoyment. Was it eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you may die? Or as Charvaka Muni said, beg, borrow, steal, and get yourself some ghee. Well, ghee is enjoyment in India. So, in other words, pig out. And then actually, we were hearing a class from Prabhupada this morning where Prabhupada said those who do that, then Krishna purifies them by making them animals in the next life. And Prabhupada in that class was referring to the dogs and the hogs and the monkeys. He said, why are there so many monkeys and hogs and dogs in Vrindavan? He said those were people just like pigged out. And they were devotees, but they pigged out too. And so that's purification. Prabhupada said they get purified in this one birth as a dog or a monkey or whatever in Vrindavan, and next birth they go back to Godhead. So that's why when I go to Vrindavan, I address all the monkeys as Prabhu or Maharaj. Maharaj monkey, Prabhu monkey, or Pravi for the female monkeys. We gotta use the proper terminology. Those who accept Dharma distinguish what is to be done, what should be done. Manu, a great Vaishnava, has said, Dhriti kshama damosteyam shocham indriyanigaraha dirvidya satchama krodo dashakam dharma lakshanam. The 10 qualities of Dharma, and this is even preliminary to Krishna consciousness, are patience, remember this, forgiveness, not being vengeful, mental control by the intelligence, not stealing, cleanliness, sense control by the intelligence, then intelligence, fixed in Shastra, knowledge, truthfulness, and absence of anger, or absence of being controlled by anger. So these are the 10 qualities of someone who is dharmic. So we should remember these things. And this is just preliminary, okay? Is preliminary. Just so that one is civilized even in the material world, even within samsara. Okay, so time for questions. We always stop 10 minutes before the hour for questions. And let us allow you to unmute yourselves. Okay. And so as we normally say, you can... Oh, Brahmaji, Lord Brahma has a question. He raised his hand. You can unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Haribol.
Prabhupada. Maharaj, I never heard much about Babaji order before. I know that in our Parampara system we have Gaur Kishore Das Babaji and Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So is it a higher situation or a position than the sannyasis we have?
Yes. Yes. It's type of sannyas. I don't say necessarily higher, because in Kali Yuga, the highest thing is actually Krishna Nam Sankirtan, what Prabhupada did. So it's not that a Babaji is higher than Prabhupada, but in one sense, it's considered to be a more renounced order than the other orders of sannyas. There's other orders of sannyas, Bahuda, Kutichak, Parvajakacharya, and finally Paramahamsa, which is what a Babaji is. For example, in the traditional Vedic system, when one would first take sannyas, one would be worried about, how am I going to eat? And so he would live in the outskirts of the same village or close to the same village, and his wife would still send him food through his sons or some other relatives. And then after that, there's the Madhukari stage, where one goes around and goes to different houses for eating. I see a lot of this is based on eating. So he goes to different houses and he begs, using his sannyas cape, and he begs for food, not money. He doesn't beg for money. That's modern day sannyas, Kali Yuga sannyas. He begs for food. One roti. That's called madhukari. Madhukari means like a bee, honeybee, who goes from one flower and takes a little pollen, goes to another flower, it takes a little pollen there. And that's the next order of sannyas. The next order is the Parvajakacharya, one who travels widely. And he's not really worried about eating, but, he'll still, he's not going to just sit around, just wait for food to march into his mouth. He's a practical person. Like Prabhupada is, he exhibited the Parvajakacharya order of sannyas. And I'm going to explain a little more about Prabhupada in a second. And so the final order, which the Babajis are, is called the Paramahamsa order, in which absolutely no endeavor is made for food, and you just stay in one place. There's no preaching in the Paramahamsa order. Then you just stay in one place chanting the holy name, absorbed in Krishna Katha, like these Babajis are. And, people will come to you and you explain things, but you're not traveling around the world anymore as a Paramahamsa. Prabhupada is on the highest platform. I said I would explain about Prabhupada's position. Prabhupada is on the highest platform, so even though he's qualified as a Paramahamsa, he takes the Parvajakacharya order of sannyas out of compassion. So even though he's an Uttama Adhikari don't preach, he steps down to become a Majjhima Adhikari, to act like a Majjhima Adhikari. So that's why we say, Jaiva Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvajakacharya. Listen to this. In the Prema Dwani prayers, we say Jaiva Vishnupad Paramahamsa. He's a Paramahamsa. He's on the highest stage. His consciousness is on the highest stage of sannyas. But Parvajakacharya, he's still going around acting on another stage out of compassion. Parvajakacharya, and then also Terra, like the Shrimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti, Vedanta Swami, Prabhupada. So these are the different stages of sannyas. Now in ISKCON, Prabhupada gave the Parvajakacharya type of sannyas to devotees because he wanted preachers. And that was the only reason for sannyas, basically, as far as Prabhupada was concerned. One time he gave the Paramahamsa order to someone, and there was a reason for that. This person was supposed to have a terminal disease. The doctors told him, you got a month or two to live, and you're going to die. And he went to Prabhupada and said, I'm going to die. And Prabhupada said, all right, you go to Vrindavan, just sit down and chant, give away all your worldly goods. He was actually my friend. And he gave away all of his worldly goods, some of which he gave away to me, which was kind of nice. That was his Gyata Sukriti. Anyway, so he gave away all of his worldly goods and basically went there and then found out it was a misdiagnosis that he was going to die. He wasn't going to die, and he just said, well, time to jump back into samsara. So he jumped back into samsara. That was the only time Prabhupada gave the Babaji order. And as far as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to my knowledge, he only gave it to a devotee named Krishnadas Babaji, who was actually a great soul, who most of us met in different times, and he was always chanting the holy names. And if you asked him, if I had, or anyone had asked him about any practical management matter, how to do this, how to do that, he would have simply laughed at you and kept chanting and gone, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. But he would sing Vaishnava songs, he would speak philosophy, just like these Babajis that are mentioned here. That's a real Babaji. And, there's certain restrictions that the Babajis follow that other sannyasis don't follow. But we are meant to preach Krishna consciousness. Junior Haridas, who was mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, was in the Babaji order of life. Not a Parvajakacharya sannyasi. So, different restrictions, different rules for different orders of sannyas. So it's better stane stata shrutikatam tanvan manobir. Just stay where one is and don't worry about taking sannyas. Okay, does that answer the question?
Yes, just one clarifying question. Did the questions, thank you so much. It really helped me understand about Babajis and their position.
Right.
But the questions that Chandidas and Yadavadas, was that the name they were asked?
Yadavadas was the friend, and Chandidas was
So
yeah.
towards the end, when they were asking questions about renounced order, were they talking still about Babaji, or were they talking about any sannyasi?
No, they were talking about Babaji order.
Okay. All
Because
right.
that was the prominent order, and it was really Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur who, in our sampradaya, introduced the other orders of sannyas. I mean, traditionally in Vaishnavism, the Babaji order was the order, and I guess, Madhavendra Puri was Tridandi sannyas, but he was also Paramahamsa. It's because he was preaching and traveling everywhere. So, but generally, when you hear discussions about renounced order of life, they're talking about the Babaji order in this particular literature, the Jaiva Dharma,
Thank you, Maharaj.
not the Parvajakacharya order, because I mean there were Parvajakacharyas, but generally, the discussion is about Paramahamsas, topmost swan-like people, devotees. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay, who else has a question? This is your opportunity. And actually, we're getting close to the time when we have to end. So, I just wanted to mention an announcement. So, the final thing here is that tomorrow and for the next day, we're going to be traveling, and I'll be sending WhatsApp notices out when I go online, which might be at a similar time. I'm not sure. But certainly the Bhagavatam classes in these places is basically at the same time, give or take an hour or two, that from the time we're giving class now in the evening. So let's see what Krishna wants. But, I'm in the Parvajakacharya order. As they say, a rolling stone gathers no moss. So I don't want to gather any moss. And we'll travel as long as we can, and I don't picture myself becoming a Babaji, although it'd be somewhat of a relief. But I don't picture myself becoming a Babaji because we have to serve Prabhupada's mission. Like Prabhupada didn't become Babaji. Prabhupada was always interested in, out of compassion, Vaishnavanam, Vaishnava. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So that Prabhupada was a kripa sindhu. He was an ocean of compassion, an ocean of mercy. So that, to me, that is the pinnacle. And that's what it means to be a follower of His Divine Grace and Prabhupada. So, all right. So we'll see everybody in a little while. Thank you very much. And we will continue. I mean, at least when we go to New Zealand, they want me to give the classes in the Jaiva Dharma, to continue with the Jaiva Dharma, at least there. And I'm not sure of Australia or wherever else I'm going to be in this material world. In the world of samsara, I will be in the world of samsara preaching Krishna consciousness. Okay, on that happy note, all glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.